Continued assaults on democracy and the outcome of this election that only serves to undermine confidence in the process is ultimately, as you both have said, ultimately corrosive to the institutions that support elections. And going forward, it will be that much harder.
Amplifying these obviously false narratives about fraud or irregularities corrodes public trust. It threatens national security, and it weakens our democracy and our standing around the world. Every time the president or his followers make these false claims, they destabilize our relationships with our allies and allow authoritarian adversaries to undercut American democratic leadership around the globe.
So Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin used his final days as chairman of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee to investigate so-called election irregularities this morning. His reasoning, as you will see, is because he says, quote, a large percentage of the American public does not believe the November election results were legitimate, end quote.
A large percentage of the American public does not believe the November election results are legitimate. This is not a sustainable state of affairs in our democratic republic.
He says this is not a sustainable state of affairs. He's right. It's not. And it's Trump, the GOP, and Ron Johnson himself contributing to this. But listen to the pushback Ron Johnson gets from his Senate colleague, Gary Peters, from the state of Michigan.
The president and many of his supporters are, unfortunately, continuing their efforts to undermine the will of the people, disenfranchise voters, and sow the seeds of mistrust and discontent to further their partisan desire for power. Whether intended or not, this hearing gives a platform to conspiracy theories and lies, and it's a destructive exercise that has no place in the United States Senate. Joe Biden won the election more than 5 weeks ago with 306 electoral votes and received the most popular votes for a presidential candidate in American history. All 50 states and the District of Columbia have certified those results. The Electoral College met Monday, and all affirm that Joe Biden will be the president on January 20th, 2021. It's a result that the majority of the American people recognize, along with the leaders of more than 150 countries around the world.
So it's as he says. They want to disenfranchise millions of voters, and Ron Johnson's pushing of this hearing after the Electoral College has already voted is doing nothing but platforming destructive conspiracy theories and disproven lies. But he wasn't done lashing out at the entire concept of the Senate hearing. Watch this next clip and be mindful and take a look at Ron Johnson's face, okay? It speaks volumes without him saying a word. So look at this.
And despite the title of today's hearing, there were no widespread election irregularities that affected the final outcome. These claims are false, and giving them more oxygen is a grave threat to the future of our democracy. Now, I understand the chairman's desire to ensure our elections run smoothly, and I agree that we need to restore faith and trust in our election process. But I'm concerned that today's hearing will do more harm than good by confusing a few anecdotes about human error with the insidious claims the president has aired. Mistakes do happen in elections, but there is a difference between a clerk making an error that gets caught and corrected during routine audits and calling the entire election fraudulent or stolen when there is no evidence just because you do not like the outcome. Amplifying these obviously false narratives about fraud or irregularities corrodes public trust. It threatens national security, and it weakens our democracy and our standing around the world. Every time the president or his followers make these false claims, they destabilize our relationships with our allies and allow authoritarian adversaries to undercut American democratic leadership around the globe. Democracy and a free society are not guaranteed. We have seen democracies around the world crumble because of similar words and actions. When executives abuse their power, when political leaders work to stifle the free press, and when they delegitimize the principle of one person, one vote, it puts our country on a dangerous path towards authoritarianism.
This clip is good for several reasons. He rightfully says things like this are, quote, a grave threat to the future of our democracy. He says what we all know, that this is only being done because the GOP and Trump especially simply don't like the outcome. We know this. But most importantly, he said that it threatens national security. I don't think that's been echoed nearly enough, at least not in the media. I mean, people have been critical of what Trump has been doing and saying in the media, but they haven't hit those two words nearly enough. I have one last clip to show you to drive the point home even more.
So yet despite this, after more than 5 weeks now that the president has lost, and numerous public officials have continued to pressure state and local elected officials to push what are demonstrably false narrative that election irregularities should somehow make him a winner in this race. You have willingly, in fact, these folks are willingly fanning the flames of discontent, and they're in the process of weakening institutions that are essential for our representative democracy. My question to you is, what is the danger, in your estimation, to the democratic process to challenge the legitimacy of an election and deny its results in the absence of any credible evidence?
So I think generally from a timing perspective, particularly with the seating of the Electoral College and 306 electoral votes for President-elect Biden, I think we're past the point where we need to be having conversations about the outcome of this election. I think that continued assaults on democracy and the outcome of this election that only serves to undermine confidence in the process is ultimately, as you both have said, ultimately corrosive to the institutions that support elections. And going forward, it will be that much harder. The trick about elections is that, you're not so much trying to convince the winner they won, it's the loser that they lost. And you need willing participants on both sides. And
the man you just listened to is named Chris Krebs, the former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And he was appointed by Trump in 2018 and fired a month ago because he would not go along with Trump's claims about widespread voter fraud. So here's my opinion on this whole charade. I have no love for Chris Krebs. I think it's problematic when liberals cheerlead these Trump appointees who would still be with him if not for Trump's egomaniacal demand for loyalty. He would still be right there in the administration. But it's important to note that what Republicans are doing has damaged democracy in this country. They have fanned the flames of chaos to such an extent that politicians like Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan was the victim of a plot to overthrow her by local militias, local state militias. Right, and I don't even want to use that term because they're not even really technically militias. They're just a group of armed men with guns. Chaos that has led to people being stabbed at MAGA protests in Washington and Black Lives Matter items being burnt in front of a historic black church. Words matter. Don't let anybody tell you different. And when propaganda has been weaponized to the extent that it has in this country under Trump, it's going to be hard putting that genie back in the bottle. The last thing that should be happening are Senate hearings elevating debunked conspiracy theories to feed the hunger of right-wing trolls online. But my name is Brian Lewis. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below.